Howdy, my good friends. Thank you for stopping by today. Now, if you've been listening here since the first season, you already know that back in my hometown, Southwest Virginia, there's a little store called the Jim Dandy Market. Now, the lady that ran the store, Miss Guida, well, she'd built herself what looked like a rotisserie oven and roasted chicken herself. Now, she had barbecue and butter roasted flavors nearly all day long. There used to be an old man sat out front of the store. His name was Huskel T. Now, he was retired from the Norfolk and Western Railroad and still wore his bibbed overalls and engineer cap. Now, he claimed to be Miss Guida's official chicken taster, among other things that he would just dig up and tell you. Yeah, as you might guess it, the BS got a little deep on occasion. So come on in and set a spell and let Huskel T tell you one today. Come on over here, boy. Have you sit down. Now, I know being a young fella and living in these hills at your age makes your mind wonder just a mite. Wondering what's on the other side of them hill. I know because it wasn't that long ago that I was sitting right where you're sitting there wondering the same thing. Now, I know some of you heard of Oz, too. Now, I hadn't. I thought it might be some kind of new government program or brand new shoe polish or something. Still ain't sure exactly what the hell it is, but I remember the day I got the mite too big for my britches, and I got me a bindle together and went over and hid behind the old hardware store there by the railroad tracks. And then I jumped the fast train I saw heading west. I settled in, put my bindle across my lap, and saw a couple other fellas headed the same way. Now, Oliver weren't no what you'd call small man. He was a pudgy fella, but he had a way of looking at you that made you think he'd done something wrong. He was waiting to see if maybe you knew about it. Stanley, well, he was so skinny that if he turned sideways, you'd lose him in the coat rack. Them two kept me in stitches the whole time. Said they was heading out to California to make motion pictures. I thought, what the heck, I may as well just go right ahead and tag along with them, see what happens. After about 2 weeks crammed up in that boxcar, we rolled into a station where Ollie and Stanley said that they were getting off. I thought, well, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. So I leaped off, told them boys I'd see them somewhere sometime, and got to walking. I looked up on the hills there and saw a sign that said Hollywood. Let me tell you what, after the things I saw out there, it'll be called Hollyweird. Place was crazier than a three-toed tomcat on a hot tin roof. It was right there that I thought maybe old Huskel T done bit off a little more than he could chew. That's when I came across this office with a big sign in the front that said MGM. I walked in because I reckoned I needed work, and it was a good place to start as any, I reckon. There was a fellow sitting behind the desk, puffing on a cigar, and looking like one of them smarmy insurance salesmen. I believe he said his name was Louis. I told him who I was and I was looking for work. He asked me if I could run a camera. I told him I could run any blame thing he could dream up. He thought that was pretty funny and told me to go on over to a place called Culver City and look for stage 14 and ask for a man named Leroy. He told me the fellow would put me to work just about as soon as I could get there. It weren't a bit more than out the front door when I see this little girl trying to cross the road. I thought she was fixing to get run over. So I told her who I was and asked her if she needed some help getting across. She said that her name was Shirley and that she was late for some appointment with some guy named Bojangle. She was a cute little thing and with them curls and all, and I couldn't stand to see something happen to her, so I scooped her up and carried her on across the road. Now, let me tell you, that was a heap of walking just to get there. Many a young fellow nowadays would give up, sit right down in the middle of the street and cry for mama. But I was raised in the mountains, and a little bit of flatland walking ain't nothing for me. Walked past this one house, a young fellow walking out in front of the back and forth in front of the house with a ball of tinfoil stuck on the end of a pencil. He was talking into it, saying something about truth or consequences. It might have been something to do with a good book or something, I don't know. Said his name was Bobby, but I could call him Bob. I asked him if I was headed in the right direction, and he said he'd tell me for 5 cents. I told him, well, now, the price is right, and I handed him a nickel. Now, he pointed me in the right direction. I don't know, something about that fellow was right likable. I still remember the date like it was yesterday. It's October 7th, 1938, when I stepped on stage 14. They had the whole thing decked out. Looked just like my home place back home in the mountains. Folks running around carrying fodder shocks, hay bales, scarecrows. There was one smart aleck sitting in one of them folding chairs, and a bullhorn spouting off and telling everybody where to put what. I don't know why he didn't get up and put them there himself, but he didn't want to, I reckon. He just kept pointing and yelling. And I thought, Lord in heaven, don't let that be Mr. Leroy. Now, I've always had a good bit of luck, and in this case, the luck was bad because it sure enough was him. I walked up to him, told him what I was there for, and he told me he didn't have time right now. He was setting a scene. That was about the time I saw a nice-looking young lady standing there watching the whole mess while she was holding a squirrel up on her shoulder like a baby. She looked at me and smiled real pretty. So I walked over and told her who I was. That's when I noticed that weren't no squirrel she was holding. It was a blame dog. Swear to God, a dog the size of a squirrel. I knew it was a dog because it started barking at me. That's the only way I could tell which end was the head. Now, she said that her name was Judy, and she was pleased to meet me. And I could see in her eyes right then that she was already sweet on me. Might have been my new Liberty Bell overalls and made it look like I had a little bit of money or something. I don't know. I had to tell her that we needed to keep it professional, or it's hard to tell where things would have went from there. That's about the time Mr. Leroy yelled for Judy to take her place over by the wagon. They brought the band in, stood them up along the wall. Looked like a bluegrass outfit from back home, except somebody done took the banjo player out and replaced him with some funny-looking horns and a piano. Judy threw up the dog into my arms and ran over to the wagon. Mr. Leroy said he was going to run through the song for practice. So the band fires up. Judy starts singing like a bird. I asked Mr. Leroy who she's supposed to be singing to. You know, by then I'd seen a motion picture or two, and I knew that there was supposed to be some two-way conversating going on, even if it were music. I told him to put that little ratty excuse for a dog up on that wagon seat, let Judy sing to it, and I'll film the whole thing for her. Boy, have you ever seen a man have a conniption? Why, Mr. Leroy turned so red I could have lit a cigar on his forehead. Then all of a sudden, it was like Lord in heaven reached down and flipped a switch in his head because he turned calm as a pastor during a funeral. I figured that was where he got him a real good look at Huskel T and decided that he didn't want to mess with the bull because he just might get the horn. He yelled at somebody to come get that little squirrel dog and throw him up on that wagon seat. I just eased back behind the camera and started shooting. Well, once I found the on and off switch, I reckon it turned out all right because it kept me on, and I started working every day. Found me a little cabin on a place called Encino. Rented it off a nice fella named Clark and his wife Carol. They just happened to be working somewhere near the same place I was, so I was able to catch a ride back and forwards to work every day with them. I'd tell them about all the different camera ideas I had that I'd come up with, and well, they must have been camera people too because they seemed real interested in all that. I'd been there about a week when I got my first paycheck. I thought there'd got to be some kind of mistake. Had too many zeros on the end of it. I mentioned it to Clark and Carol on the way home, and they told me that that's what all cameramen made out there in that place. Boy, I thought I was holler rich. So I'd get home and take a little walk, find a place to grab me a little supper. I'd getting right tired of eating them city squirrels every day. You know, them things ain't got no hair on them. Looked like they're wearing a stovepipe and it was bent. And it took me a hand drill and a cold chisel to get the skin off of them and cook them. Ugliest things I ever seen. But squirrel, whether it's got hair or not. But I figured I could afford a meal now. Didn't walk too far before I saw a place shaped just like a derby hat. Swear to God, boy. Whole building was built exactly like a dad blame hat. I figured, well, anybody that's got gumption enough to build something like that's got to make good food, so I walks inside. The man steps up on me and asks if I wanted to be seated. I said, no, sir. All I need is a ladle or two of your pinto beans, a square of cornbread, 2 cat head biscuits, and a green onion stuffed in a poke for walking. Boy, that man looked at me like I had a baby arm growing out of my forehead and it was holding a peach. He told me that they didn't serve beans. He had no idea what cornbread was and told me they only served biscuits during tea time. Never heard of a poke. But he told me that he'd fix me up with a fillet of something or another and a couple of sides. Boy, he whipped that whole meal out in 15 minutes. Already had it in a poke, and was when I understood why I had a few extra zeros on my paycheck. He was right proud of all that. Then had the nerve to add his own tip right on the receipt. I was lucky to get out of that place with any change in my pocket. Once I got home and opened up the bag, I saw why it only took him 15 minutes to cook it all. That big old piece of meat weren't nowhere near done. He'd done cut them crick fried taters into strips, and it looked like he fried each one of them separate from the others. Had a big old hunk of buttered bread with something on it that stunk so bad I couldn't stay in the room with it. Smelled kind of like a ramp. I throwed it all back in the bag, took it out back, throwed it on the ground, set fire to it. Then I went and got me a couple more of them stovepipe squirrels. I might have been a little tired of eating them, but they sure hit the spot. Oddest thing happened whilst I was eating the last bit of that squirrel gravy. The smoke off that burn pile where I got rid of that messed up food was smoking something fierce. The odd part weren't the fact that it was smoking. It was, what was odd was, well, the smoke was colored. Boy, up to that point, the whole blame world was a series of gray. Every shade you could think between black and white. But that smoke, it went up with green, red, yellow, blue, swirling in it. First thing I thought was, well, I done got hold of a bad squirrel. So I went on to bed. I had a big day the next day. Next morning, I'll never forget it, October 13th, 1938. I met Clark and Carol, got a ride to work. I kept waiting for them to ask me something about that colored smoke, but they never did. So I thought, sure enough, it was a bad squirrel. Heck, I always found them milling through the trash anyway, and when I'm bound to get a hold of something bad sooner or later. And I got to work. The first thing I saw was buku little fellers running around all over the place. I mean, little fellers no taller than 3 foot. I thought, well, now, maybe that smoke done something to my eyes. So help me. I looked around, and there were little fellers everywhere. Some of them was carrying things. Some of them was running around. One of them had a mustache that looked like it'd been growing since the Civil War. I figured California must have a whole different kind of youngin' than we do back home. Well, that wasn't until one of them spoke to me. He had a voice deep enough to sing Bates for the Oak Ridge Boy. They'd done built a whole new place right there on that stage in one blame night, and it looked like something out of a moonshine nightmare. Didn't make a lick of sense to me. Had bricks for a floor, big old flowers sticking up out the floor, and beat it all, they'd sawed off part of that old farmhouse and threw it right in the middle of it all. And I reckon they forgot to tell folks it was coming because they'd dropped it right on top of somebody. And I could see their legs sticking out from under it. Judy was standing there inside that piece of house holding that cuckleberry of a dog and smiling at me. I had to tell her again, we just need to keep it professional. I figured that maybe once this mess is over with, if she's still sweet on me, maybe I could beat her somewhere and impress her with my mumbly peg and whittling skill. But that had to wait. We had business first. And then somebody's going to have to clean this whole mess up. Anyway, I walked up behind my camera, turned it on, and got the good focus on Judy. And I got to admit right here, I was kind of getting a little bit sweet on her too, but couldn't let her know just yet. About that time, old Leroy yelled action at the top of his lungs. That's Hollywood talk for start work now. Judy held that dog like it was fixing to starve to death, turned and opened that door to walk out. That's when something happened that sent the whole place off the deep end. When she opened that door, folks, I could see color. I had to wipe my eyes and look past the camera. I focused that camera on what was on the other side of that door because the whole place was full of color. Judy stepped out the door. The little fellers were dancing and waving their arms around like the end of days was here. I reckon they thought they were. Some woman came floating down inside a bubble and landed right by Judy. Why to God, floated down inside a cotton-picking bubble. Then smoke came up from the ground, and out popped a green-skinned woman dressed in her mourning clothes. But she weren't mourning. She had an attitude like a sore-ass bear. Said something about them legs and tried to steal the prettiest set of shoes off of 'em you ever seen. The bubble lady beat her to 'em and slipped 'em on Judy's feet and stared old Greenskin and tried to touch 'em. And I tell you now, so help me, that set of legs curled right up under that piece of house and disappeared. Old Greenskin got so mad that she turned around, turned into smoke, and disappeared right there. I reckon Judy wanted the heck out of there as bad as I did, so one of them little fellers told her to follow that yellow brick road and it'd take you right out of here. By then, the whole place was running around, screaming, dancing, singing like it was a second coming. And even that little dog's hair was standing up like a porcupine. Now, I didn't say nothing to nobody about burning no food because I was afraid that I done caused all this. Now, if you think the world was coming unglued when rock and roll came about, you ought to have seen it the day of color hit the earth. And I got it all on film to prove it. That was about the time I figured old Huskel T done seen him all he needed to see. I done figured out that California was crazy, but I didn't need no full-scale demonstration to prove it. I didn't even wait till Clark and Carol came by. I said, "Peach, do your stuff," and I hoofed it all the way back to the cabin. First thing I thought was, dang, I didn't know it was painted green. Didn't matter now. I needed to hear some news on what just happened. So I turned on the radio. Well, there weren't no news on any of it. All I heard was some lady preacher named McPherson talking about the end of days. I thought, yeah, I'd say end of days. I held tight a few days right there in the cabin until I figured out a few things. Some fella named Orson Welles finally came on and let the cat out of the bag about the whole thing. He said we was under attack by Martians. The fella didn't make it because they busted right in the studio and took him out telling everybody the truth. I knew right then it weren't none of my doing. The Martian done sent that color. I figured that they was testing it on us before they turned the whole world green or something. I wasn't going to sit around and wait to find out. Packed my bundle, grabbed what little money I had left after that fancy restaurant, tried to rob it away from me, and jumped the first train headed back to the mountain. This time there weren't but one fella riding with me. Said his name was Hoffa. He was headed east to work with truckers. Seemed like a nice fella. Told me if I ever needed work, just look him up. I thought, well, I just might have to do that since I'm unemployed now. Got back to the Jim Dandy Market about 10 o'clock at night. Didn't know the place was painted bright yellow that you see right now. Walked inside, and this guy was taking off them big roasters. She asked me why I was back so soon, and why I looked like I'd just seen the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. I said one word, boy. Martian. I hope you got something out of our story today. If you did, please rate and review the podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, or Spotify, throw us a like, and don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you watch or listen. come on over to Appalachian Murder, Mystery, and Legend Podcast on Facebook group, where we talk Appalachian, about anything else you want to talk about. And I'll be back real soon with another Appalachian murder, mystery, or legend. I'll see you then.